Hi everyone, I'm Captain Vietnam, and welcome back to your special features section of your Captain Vietnam Blu-ray, or if you're watching this online, welcome to what I'll title this segment, Shield from the World. And, well, obviously we're going to be talking about this bad boy and the other bad boy, or bad girl, I don't judge. So a fun fact about this first off is that I made these shields first, these two shields, and then I came up with the idea for Captain Vietnam afterwards. I was walking down the street back in high school and the Wonder Woman had just come out. And so I figured like, hey, what if I just take this really clean looking hubcap, I bring it back home, clean it up, and I paint it up to have the Wonder Woman logo. I figured that would make a pretty good Mother's Day gift for my mom. I never ended up actually doing that, so it ended up sitting in my outside porch for 2 to 3 years. So now I come in the summer, right after Endgame comes out, I believe that's August 2019 or so. And I come up to my dad and I'm like, hey, can we paint this like Captain America's kind of? And he's like, okay, I guess. And so this thing costed about like $10 or so, because we didn't really have red and blue spray paint lying around. And besides, it's free for me anyways. My dad ended up buying those supplies and not me, so. Anyways, another thing about this shield's design is that, the original design I had for it, it would have a white star in the middle. And that's going to be important because this was pointed out to me by a viewer. I didn't have this intentionally in mind when I was designing it, but this happens to look a lot like the Vietnamese nationalist party flag. It was going to have a white star in the middle, and it's just going to generally look like what this does right now. My mom is the reason why we didn't go full Vietnamese on this one, because she wanted to keep this center just nice and pretty, and so instead of being fully Captain Vietnam, I'm just kind of Captain Toyota. The process for making this thing was pretty simple. It was just spray paint, and you put down masking tape. If you don't know what that is, it's kind of like a paper-based tape. You see it all the time. It's also called like painter's tape. You just cover the areas where you don't want paint to splatter on, and you just spray it over a good amount, and you peel the tape right away. And that's how you can get like these really pretty clean lines. It's not always perfect. There are special tapes that claim to get it always perfect, but in general you're gonna have a little bit of spillover. But you can always clean it off just a little bit with acetone. Get aka nail polish remover. Just get a cotton ball or Q-tip. You just squeak off any paint that you don't really want on these areas. And then for the back here, here's where it really gets interesting, because if you haven't noticed yet, there are screws right here and there, and also right there and there. And so overall, for making the back here with the straps and everything, that's thanks to my dad. We just took an old belt that was hanging around in the garage, and well, we drilled holes straight through them and screwed them over. Had some screw plates left behind as well. Right here, I wanted to make sure that the belt buckle was here so that the strap would be adjustable. Just in case like my arm doesn't really fit it right. So as you can see, I'll just demonstrate really quickly. I'll unhinge it right there, and then just loop it right back on. So if I'm having a fatter forearm, or if I'm giving this to someone else to sort of play with who has a bigger forearm, I can give it to just that first hole right around there, and there you go. It's pretty nice and loose. But for like this jacket, or if I'm wearing sleeves in general, I can put it down to that second hole. It'll hold out pretty tight as well. And if it's just my arm regular, then I'd probably want to put it to that third hole. But you get the idea. It's adjustable, and it's nice and flexible. And the funny thing is that I had to get a special tool with my dad. I don't know what it's called, but it has like a couple of prongs that can make holes that are really sort of that tiny. And the idea is that you just put it right on and you just twist and turn till you can punch right through that letter. Or in the worst case, you'll have enough of an outline so that you can drill just straight through. Because the actual holes for the belt are on this side. Because no one wants holes that are this close to the buckle. I mean, who's gonna need, you know, to have a waist this small? Now let's move on to the second shield here. This shield, which is technically the first in the short film, but really it's the second one we made. Funny story about this one was that while we were making this first one here, my mom was driving down the street and she saw this hubcap. She saw it was in pretty good condition. She came straight away back home and she picked me up, and we went back out there to pick it up. We had to stop traffic and everything. We were right near a stoplight, and it was a red light, thankfully. So I had plenty of time to just pick it up and walk back into the car. We come back here. There's really no paint on this. This really like looked great on its own already with the black stripes and everything. So all we really did was end up screwing things through and taking the leftovers of the first belt that we used here, the only belt we used actually, on the first shield, and we used it for this one. And you can tell that, you know, we were running out of belt space because that hardly has enough space for my palm to go through. This hardly has enough space for my forearm to go through. So this is a much tighter shield. It's not going to fit everyone, and it doesn't even fit me perfectly. Also, I had to pop off the Honda logo here, and I had to actually take off the holder for the logo as well, just so it wouldn't stab me right as I'm holding it right there in my palm. It's just, you know, it's just going to be stabbing right into the back of my hand. It's not very pleasant. So I fouled that down. I don't know if you can see it with our current lighting setup, but there are marks on there. And I also have to file down the middle of the first shield as well, because there was this tiny spiky little tip right there, which I don't know if you can see that as well, but you know, you can see the filing marks if you look hard enough. Let's get into the story significance of these two shields. So I think, as I pointed out previously in the wardrobe segment of our special features, it boils down to the conflict between two worlds, essentially, two sort of like traditional value systems that Captain Vietnam, you know, he has to make a decision based on. In our short film, he gets first sent off with this shield. This is his father's shield. He made it for him, gave it to him as a kid. Then he takes this with him everywhere he goes up until he's about a teen or so. He's just trying his best to shield himself from the world. Shield himself thanks to his father's advice, which is to never change, not for the world. But does that advice really apply, you know? Does this sort of advice really work when at every single place you go to, you're being rejected? How does this advice really play out in the real world? Does this really work when, you know, like, this advice is not reflective of the kind of world that Captain Vietnam lives in? Captain Vietnam is carrying this with him everywhere he goes. Is it a burden? Is it a shield? Is he being like sheltered? You know, you can draw your own conclusions from that, but the bottom line is this: like, this is his dad's shield that he handed down to Captain Vietnam. Over here, by the end of the film, you know, Captain Vietnam is struggling with this question, you know. I'm basically ripping off Captain America's story, but I'm taking out all the action bits and I'm cramming in the question of, like most Asian Americans, they experience this question, which is, how much do I change and how much should I stay the same? You know, you get that general question, you know, and this is Captain Vietnam's response, because sure, on the surface this looks American and all, but he still has a shield. You know, you don't really need a shield to get out and take opportunities. All you really need to do is just head into a bunch of interviews and get stuff done and show the world what you're really worth. But this is how Captain Vietnam shows what he's worth, because he's not throwing away this idea of the shield. He's still going to be protected by the guidance that his dad gives, but he slapped a paint job on there to make it look either American or secretly Vietnamese, if you're thinking that this resembles the Vietnamese Nationalist Party flag. And so that's essentially the story significance as it boils down. It's, you know, between these two shields here, what kind of advice and what kind of mindset does Captain Vietnam need to approach life with? Because he can't just be stubborn all the time. That's been getting him rejected every single time. But at the same time, does he really want to ditch away the last thing he has from his dad? You know, this is the last thing he has of his dad. His dad didn't leave him anything else. So, who knows? You can draw whatever conclusions you like from these two, but that's generally how I see the story of Captain Vietnam. But my art isn't for me alone. It's also for you to decide as a viewer. Essentially, how do you see how these two shields interact with each other? Again, thank you guys for watching this special features segment, Shield from the World. If you'd like to see the next special features segment, be sure to click probably right around here. And if you want to see the previous one, click right around there if you're watching this online via video, or just feel free to use it like an actual Blu-ray if you're watching this on the physical Blu-ray copy that I've given you. Once again, thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next special features segment, which will be covering low budget filmmaking overall. I haven't named that one yet.